What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, Fightful.com. Who doesn't love the WWE Royal Rumble match? I do, probably more than many, to the point to where I have spent much of my time over the last 4 years collecting stories about the Royal Rumble. I have a new feature on Fightful.com, over 10,000 words, called Inside the Royal Rumble. And I speak to people who are involved in the Royal Rumble match from all aspects, in the ring, production, commentary, even audio mixing. There's a lot to the Royal Rumble, and I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could about it. It's not hard to find people to talk about the Royal Rumble. There are at least now 60 people in a Royal Rumble match every single year. But there are a variety of roles. There are people that are there to make others look good. There are people that are there to get their own shine. There are people there to look dominant. And then there are the people that call the action. There's a whole lot to the Royal Rumble match that so many people don't know. And Inside the Royal Rumble was something that I've been wanting to do for a very long time, to kind of dive into that. But I also wanted to release a companion video piece with it too. Now, all these stories are not in the video. There are a lot that you'll have to go to the article to see, because a lot of these interactions were via text message or off the record or anonymous or even via DM. So there's a lot of stuff that you're going to get in the article that is not in this video. But I wanted to also compile the video that I had. Conversations with wrestlers from the bottom of the card to the top of the card. Some short, some really extended, in-depth and long. We even spoke to some writers about the Royal Rumble. And we're going to get you kicked off by talking to one of the best. How about the 1994 Royal Rumble winner, Bret the Hitman Hart? Last question, we'll let you go. You mentioned Pat Patterson and how instrumental he was in matches. I'm working on a Royal Rumble project, and you had a couple of pretty big moments in Royal Rumbles, from the one that led to Final Four in 97 to the double win in 94. What do you remember about putting those matches together? Who helped out, and just the process of a Royal Rumble? Because it has to be a complicated situation for some people, and for some people maybe not.
Well, it's one of those things that I think when they lay out the strategy or the psychology of the match, Pat was always one of the best to lay it out. He always had a great vision. Pat was one of those kind of guys that if you had an idea and you were talking to Pat, if you said to Pat, like, how about this? And then you explain the idea to Pat. Pat had an ability to visualize what you're talking about while you're talking. Like, he could visualize it and recognize right away whether or not it would work. And like, I can remember when I first started in WWF, it wasn't a Rumble or anything, but I can remember, been there about 2 years. And I can remember Pat coming up to me and going, we were working with the Bulldogs. And he goes, I can't remember what the finish was or anything like that, but I just remember he was kind of out of ideas. And I said, how about this? And I ran a whole finish by him that we used to do in Calgary with the Stampede Wrestling. And I just remember I laid it out to him, and Pat looked at me and goes, you can do all that? Like, just like that? And I said, yeah, we can do all that. We've done it lots of times. And he goes, I want to see it. You do everything you just told me, and I want to watch. I'm going to go out and watch. And we went out and did the whole match like clockwork. And he came back and he was just blown away. And he was like, I can't believe how good that match was, and how, like, you had so much in there and so much, it didn't look rehearsed or practiced. It was just, we had done it a million times kind of thing. And I think that was when, if I can pat myself on the back, I think that was when they started to realize that I was a good finish guy. Like, I was a guy that could come up with my matches, and like, you don't need to, I remember with when I fought Davey in Wembley, I remember telling Vince, I went up to him, I said, do you want to know the finish? He goes, no, don't tell me.
Oh.
He goes, I want to see it for myself. I just want to go out and feel it. Like, I know it's going to be good. I just want to watch it. And, most of the time that I was champion, they would give me a rough idea of what they wanted for a finish, whether it's a DQ or was a count out or whatever, a pinfall or a sharpshooter. And the rest was up to me. Like, you figure it out. You do whatever you want. Because they were satisfied that I would make it the best possible. And I always liked that and appreciated that respect that they had for me. And, with the Rumbles, it's kind of, if you're lucky enough to be in the final sort of 8 guys in there to kind of be part of the best part of the storytelling of a Rumble. It's, I think if I remember correctly, the Rumble with Steve Austin in Texas and all that, where I got double crossed and I actually won and all that. That was all, I think, Vince. And, and Steve was such a great guy to work with. He was a natural, he had a great kind of chemistry of playing his heel part, especially at that time of being the badass kind of rattlesnake heel that he was trying to be. We always had such great chemistry together, Steve and I. Like we enjoyed the role playing of me being the, I love the look on Steve's face when I walk out and he's like stunned, and he's almost scared that I'm coming out. And,
one of those.
So, a lot of that was Steve, a lot of that was me, a lot of that was Vince. It was just everyone gelling together and having good chemistry. And, I will say, as far as Rumbles go, I think my favorite Rumble was the one with Lex Luger, where we both went out at the same time. And, that was so hard to do. I mean, if you really think about it, like, you can both go over the top rope, but you have to land exactly the same time on the ground. It has to be done perfect. And there's no way to guarantee that. There's no way to ensure that. There's this, and in fact, they didn't film it. They filmed it and they didn't show it because they didn't want anyone to go, oh, well, Bret Hart hit the ground like he's like way ahead of Lex or vice versa. But I always give Lex credit for that. If you watch Lex, the way I go over the top rope, Lex grabs me and we just flip over the top rope. And, it's great athleticism that both of us landed exactly. I remember they showed it the next day, Vince and Pat. They were so, we didn't want to show anyone the camera angle. But in fact, we can show the camera angle because you know what? You both landed exactly the same time. And that's the beauty of two guys that are good athletes. Lex was always a great athlete and, just two consummate professionals in there.
They tried it a few years later with Rock and Big Show, and it just didn't work. One of them hit before the other one. It's hard to time. And then they accidentally did it, I think, 11 years later with Cena and Batista, where one of them was supposed to land first. So I think you guys are the only ones that have timed it perfectly thus far in the Royal Rumble. That's quite an achievement.
Well, I give all the credit to Lex on that one because if you watch it, I just sort of grab him and he does the flip. And I remember when I was falling over the rope and going to land, I remember trying to pull my feet up. And I'm sure Lex was doing the same thing because I didn't want my feet to be first. And we both hit the exact same time. It's pretty much a fluke. Impossible to if we had to do it twice, I don't know if we would have done it twice the same way.
The 1994 Royal Rumble is remembered most for that spot with Bret and Lex Luger. They timed it perfectly. It was very cool to hear Bret Hart give Lex Luger all that credit because you always hear Bret Hart sort of toot his own horn and bury some other people. But he gave Lex Luger a lot of credit. And look at when they have tried to do that in the past. They tried to do it at 2000, and The Rock and Big Show did not hit the floor at the same time. And then in 2005, they didn't try to do that. But it still happened. In 2005, Batista and John Cena were the last two people in the Royal Rumble. They both hit the ground, but Batista was supposed to win that match. They came out there, they restarted it, and Vince McMahon tears both of his quads. That's not something you can prepare for. That's not something you can be ready for. Court Bauer of MLW was with the company as a writer. And I talked to him about a lot of the stuff that went into writing Royal Rumbles, that went into dealing with a situation like with Batista and John Cena, and that went into dealing with the situation like Vince McMahon tearing both of his quads. This is an extended interview about the Royal Rumble and the creative process in which goes into that?
Well, it's a collaborative process. Everyone has their opinion, their thoughts, their vision for the Rumble, which is essentially the big bang for the year for WWE. It kicks off WrestleMania season, and that then takes you into late spring into the summer. So everyone has their vision and how they see the year playing out, and the tent poles throughout the year, Rumble, then Mania, etc. And so you're constantly having informal conversations in the hallways, at the arenas, or at Titan Towers. You're having a flurry of emails traded back, which has everyone on it. Once in a while, Vince will jump in and bark something or put over something or just not feel it at all. You have guys like Michael Hayes, who has taken over the day-to-day operations of being the architect for the Royal Rumble from the days when Pat Patterson was real hands-on, and he still contributes to it because he's a phenomenal finish man. He's just laying out matches. He's a wizard at it. But Michael's the day-to-day guy on that. So Michael's kind of come up with entertaining scenarios and collaborating with talent and seeing what they can add to it to sprinkle in. And that's starting really right around early December, late November, and you go through January. And sometimes you know your destination. It's assumed, everyone knows, everyone's on the same page. We know who the winner is going to be. Other times it can almost be up to almost a game day decision. It just depends on how stable the operation is, the creative direction, how healthy the talent is, what opportunities come in at the 11th hour for WrestleMania that may require the creative team and the chairman to rethink the game plan for the Rumble. So there's so many variables that can come into play that can change up anything and everything, but you try in your best effort to have a game plan and hopefully stick to it. But year to year it's different, and regime to regime it's different within WWE.
So when Rey wins the Royal Rumble, it's obviously fresh off of the passing of Eddie Guerrero. Were there like any other picks that you remember? Like was there much of any discussion given?
Oh
to
yeah.
that?
Yeah. I mean, there was some discussion, but I think the prevailing thought was Rey should win coming off of the death of Eddie Guerrero. It was a weird time too because Vince wanted to, by design, create an opportunity to get some heat and heat up Randy Orton. So they did the many consider both internally, of course, and the fans and media, a fairly distasteful setup with Orton and Rey and trying to, per the chairman, create heat for Orton in that situation using Eddie's name, and there was a lot of justification that this is what Eddie would love and this is what Eddie would want. And, it's not like we have a direct line to Eddie Guerrero to get his notes and his feedback, so it was a little uncomfortable for a lot of us. But the idea was that Rey would be earmarked to be the top star to ascend in the aftermath of that horrible tragedy. And it's weird because I remember that moment in time when it's like you try to, pick up the pieces after Eddie Guerrero's passing and try to figure out, okay, what's next? How do we figure this out? And Vince is saying we need to find the next Eddie Guerrero, and I'm instantly personally thinking, well, it's like you don't just find the next anyone, especially someone that's so super talented like an Eddie Guerrero. It's like back in the 80s when Vince was already in the late 80s looking for the next Hulk Hogan and the next this guy, the next that guy. There's only one Rock, there's only one Hogan, there's only one Austin, there's only one Eddie, there's only one John Cena. It's like you can't just clone that or think another talent just because he's Hispanic is going to be that. And I'm not by any way devaluing Rey Mysterio. He's an incredible attraction, Hall of Famer, but he's not the same. You can't program, you can't write, you can't book a Rey Mysterio the same as Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero had a totally different persona, totally different belief system as a character, lying, cheating, stealing. Rey Mysterio was a totally different character. He was so much smaller, and it was like a superhero come to life. The children related to him different. His audience was slightly different. Eddie was a little grayer. He could have an edge to him. He could be a lot of things, and he couldn't be the same thing. But back to your question, Rey was for all intents and purposes, our guy going into that Royal Rumble in 2006.
So he and Triple H had kind of like a double Iron Man type of situation. You mentioned that some of these things are game time decisions. Is something like that a game time decision, or can they show up and be like, well, you're going an hour?
No, you're collaborating over the few weeks going into it. It can be fine tuned and stuff. But I want to say right about now, Michael Hayes, Pat Patterson, Shane McMahon will be in a hotel suite they'll rent out in Stamford, and they'll have a lot of food, and there'll be some liquor, and they will kind of game plan the Royal Rumble, the entrances, the eliminations, and by the end of this week, the last week going into the holidays, they'll then pitch and present their game plan to the creative team and Vince McMahon. This is circa 2006, so what it's like in 2017, can't tell you. And you'll go through it, and a lot of it's very impressive. A lot of it's interesting. There might be a few red flags, some fine tuning. Vince might say, "Hey, hold on a second." And you go through the whole process, and you kind of know, okay, they're looking to showcase a guy and tell this certain story where he's an Iron Man guy and he's going to go the distance. And then you say, well, do we want him to break any records? Well, what records are there? And you fire up Google and you figure out, okay, because there's no in-house system that has all the records except for Howard Finkel, that can just, he's like the in-house Google that can tell you everything about anyone. But that's one of the weird things as a sidebar. I remember getting Stephanie. There was these great books. I think Scott Teal or someone had like the MSG record books, and they go back like 100 years or something. I remember as a gift I got Stephanie said, "This is something that you might want or might want the creative team to have." And of course I expensed it, but it was a cool resource to have, and it was surprising me that WWE didn't have something in-house like that. Now they do now have an archivist and that kind of thing, but it surprised me if they didn't have it.
It always I always wonder when situations happen and Kane's tossing a certain number of people out, or maybe Roman Reigns is throwing a certain people out. Like when Kane was doing it, do they know, hey, he's inching towards this record? Or is that even a conversation? As you said, that record wasn't a thing, but they did have those Royal Rumble by the numbers videos eventually.
Yeah, I mean, some of it, and again, some of it's the TV department does a phenomenal job, and they're looking for that information. They're trying to pull stories and to enhance the attraction. Very rarely you'll have a directive from the creative team saying, "Hey, let's make sure we have this, this, and this." Sometimes if everyone has if it's very well organized year or week, they can anticipate that and coordinate with the TV. And sometimes the TV end just builds it regardless. They do a phenomenal job of creating content like that. Sometimes too much. You'll see a pay-per-view and you'll be like, oh my God, there's so many video packages in this. It's like, maybe it's a benefit for people that don't want to watch that content on a week-to-week basis. But if you watch it you're a diehard fan, it's like, I've seen all this. Can we just get to the action and get some interviews?
There are always surprises in the Royal Rumble. Who comes up with the ideas of maybe who to contact?
Contact in terms of wouldn't it be cool if we got Carlos Colon and Dory Funk Jr. in a Rumble?
Yes.
That was a funky Rumble. It's just something that will pop up from random people. It's like, hey, what if there were people that were fans like Brian Gewirtz is a huge fan of Bob Backlund, so he'd pitch sometimes like, hey, maybe we can find a way to get Backlund in this, and he'll have an idea that it's possibly humorous, and then you just have talent relations dial them up and see if they can get him in. I always love those kind of surprises. Sometimes you'll have a receptive audience from the chairman, etc. Sometimes he'll bark and say, God damn, it's about our stars, not the stars of yesteryear, or guys that maybe our fan base today doesn't know. And then there's sometimes some validity to it. It's just you have to balance the star power and the surprises, and it has to be the right balance. Too many, it's kind of funky. The wrong star coming out, it's like, oh, that's random. You just never know, and hopefully they have a purpose. And so, what I love about it too is guys like Goldust, they'll trigger a whole resurgence for their career, a revival for them, just off of that kind of randomness. I think it happened for a lot of guys over the last 10, 15 years, where guys like Mr. Perfect weren't anticipated to come back. They were just a one-off, and man, they got a big pop. They looked like $1 million. Let's bring them to TV, and then TV turns into the next week, and then they're offered a deal. So I like that. It's a wild card component, and sometimes you can bring in a veteran when you realize you needed him and you missed someone like that, and that's something that I hope to see with the Rumble coming up.
How did ECW change things for you guys? Because after that, it wasn't like an even number of entrants from each brand. Like,
right.
It was really different. How did that affect things?
It was everyone was trying to build up ECW and help support this brand extension, and so whatever was required to make it successful, make it viable, was important. And the concern always within some circles within the creative team was the selection of talent used in the Rumble, and also making sure that they not only held their own with the other brands, but if possible could be showcased. And that, I mean, so often, because there's this internal rivalry about brand superiority that Vince kind of likes to have within the writers' teams, and you have a SmackDown team, the Raw team, and the ECW team, is to have it be like they're competing, and so it can undercut the creative process, and so that sometimes was a challenge in making ECW stand out. You had other people that said, well, what does it do for my SmackDown guys? What does it do for my guys from Raw? Instead of it being a collaborative, creative experience in a writer's room in LA, where those kind of issues don't happen, because these are all characters in this world that you want to see go into different directions. Wrestling is it's a hybrid. It's a totally different thing.
I think my favorite moment from the 2007 Royal Rumble, which has since been edited out, was after Great Khali came in there and wrecked everybody's shit. Shawn Michaels had to lay there and say, "Look at the camera." Like, it was
live TV, man. It's
great.
Well, I mean, think about the time when Vince came out in that was the build of 21.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You started right after that, right?
Yeah, and it was but I had heard all the stories, and it was very, Stephanie freaking out backstage, and Vince trying to will himself and his quads to kick out of this injury, and the shock of it, and it's live TV, and he went out there to call an audible, and now you had to call an audible on the audible. So it was like, oh my God, what do we do here? And those kind of moments, hey, that's live TV. That's the splendor of it all, I guess. It's hard to call an audible when you're in a situation like this, and TV, like, sometimes TV can go by very quickly. Other times it can go by very slowly. Those are one of those moments. It's like just time stopped, and backstage you're not only dealing with the aftermath of the funky finish, you got Vince being stretchered out. And it was a weird thing. And then Vince really doesn't like to put himself out there looking weak, so it's like he kind of became reclusive until he was up to a point where he could be mobile. So you had Vince, like, kind of you had the voice of Vince McMahon on a speakerphone, but you didn't see him for a while, which speaks to this kind of image he's always had, this strong guy that's larger than life. Everything about him is very much by design, and if he doesn't look strong, and if he doesn't look 100%, he doesn't want any other image of him looking weaker, like in a wheelchair out there.
Yeah, I had some questions about the 05 Rumble, and mainly some of the entrance in it, because I know you started right afterwards. Right. Daniel Puder got lit up, something proper. Yeah. Were there any, like, ideas or plans for him that you had heard of at that point? Because he was kind of just brought up as a reward for winning Tough Enough, and he didn't last. But Holly, Guerrero, and I can't remember who else. They and Benoit, they took care of him. Pretty decisively.
Yeah. It was a different time in WWE, and their locker room culture was so different than it is today versus even on the indies. That was a different time, and how they treated young talent that they felt maybe shouldn't be getting a certain push and shouldn't be being paid at a certain price, and the whole Kurt Angle's thing. And so there was a real old school undercurrent to the SmackDown locker room. You had the whole kangaroo court deal. You had just a lot of etiquette and challenge issues that would come up with the younger guys, and it was baptism by fire. These kids don't know that this is a certain process, and they don't know that talent, the veterans expect certain things because they're not being smartened up to it. So it was a really tough time for that. Let's put it this way: I'm very glad that that's not the culture today. And it's not like people didn't see it as concerning at the time, but it's nice to see it's evolved into something I think a bit more professional, a little more conductive, and it's just it was the whole time, that whole period of time was rough. I mean, there were guys that would just be dressed down and humiliated by guys like Chris Benoit, and it was. I don't think it really helped anyone's cause. I don't think it really helped the talent in any way. I think it demoralized talent.
Speaking of, there's Guy Muhammad Hassan. He was factored into this match and eliminated by the entire field. But before that, he attacked Scotty 2 Hotty. What do you think goes into, okay, we're going to put this guy in the Rumble and Scotty 2 Hotty, but he's not going to make it to the ring? I don't think he ever made it to the ring for a Royal Rumble. I think he got attacked before 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, sometimes stuff like that becomes like a running gag. And sometimes it actually is funny, and other times it's just like, wow, we're really diminishing this talent by doing this thing, and it's become his thing now. That's
Curtis Axel got a nice run out of it.
Yeah, it all depends. It all depends on the year. There are guys that can turn something like that, and look, Santino is a great example of a guy that might have been ripping on the square, but he was able to convert that and honestly totally changed directions from being like a shooter and underdog fighting from underneath into a really popular comedy character. It's just how you embrace look, Dusty Rhodes, polka dots. It's how you embrace something and can convert it into being money. I mean, people might even say that Goldust could be an example of that, and making something that could be seen as devaluing you and turn it into a real positive for your career.
As I look at the SmackDown mid-card at this point, it's like Hardcore Holly, who might be the best out of all these guys, Kenzo Suzuki, Luther Reigns, Orlando Jordan, Scotty 2 Hotty, Charlie Haas, Rene Dupree, Mark Jindrak, who had quite a bit of an upside, Paul London. That seems like a challenge.
Yeah, it's a funky, when you look at the Rumble and the talent you have year to year and the depth issues you have, and guys like Paul London, who I think could have been so much more in WWE, but various things got in the way from allowing that. It's interesting when you look at each year's Royal Rumble and how talent is presented and what the year holds for them in the aftermath of the Rumble, because the Rumble kind of is, like I said, the big bang for WWE, and you see how guys are slotted going into the new year, and what's their career trajectory going out of that year. Guys like Paul London in 2006 is a great example. Where was he by the end of 2006? And soon thereafter, out of the company.
Court Bauer was one of the first interviews that I conducted in speaking about the Royal Rumble, which is why you heard Pat Patterson's name in present tense. He had not yet passed, and his name came up repeatedly when asking about who sets up the Royal Rumbles. Then it became Michael Hayes. In more recent years, it's become the likes of Jamie Noble, Shane McMahon, and Michael Hayes on the men's side, although several participants on both the men's and women's side of recent Royal Rumbles have told me that they have heavy input in the match. What they do is they start off, sometimes they'll split it up into two, and then towards the end, those people will break off, the ones that are going to be in the match last, and they kind of decide and figure out what they're going to do in the Royal Rumble match towards the end. Not everybody sees the end of the Royal Rumble. Dr. Tom Prichard, he's not best known for his 1995 appearance in the Royal Rumble, but he is known for his wrestling mind and his ability to train tons of wrestlers. I was able to speak to him about his thoughts on the Royal Rumble, his experience in it, among other things. You were in the 95 Rumble, which was a lot different than a lot of other ones. I know you did some in Smoky Mountain, some battle royals that were Royal Rumble style, but that 95 one, the intervals were much shorter. It was like a 38-minute match. What do you remember about that match and it coming together?
I just remember it was not. We certainly were not an integral part or a heavy part of that match at all. But they're going to try something and see if it works. And I think that was part of just trying to keep the pay-per-view down to a reasonable time and,
Sure.
and try and give it everybody a chance to get out there and have a lot of fun. So, especially in this day and age with the house show business being what it was even before all this shutdown happened, WWE knows how to innovate and knows how to regroup and knows how to reinvent. I think I wouldn't even go that far. They reinvented the business before when pay-per-view was in its infancy. So they've always tried new things. Hell, the cinematic look, things like that. So I think no matter what happens, there's always going to be something new and innovative coming from them. It's just the way they operate. It's the vibe. It's the magic pixie dust they throw in the hallways as you walk down the hallways that causes everybody to just come alive and start thinking of things. And Hunter's got a great mind, no doubt about it. He's got a lot of great people behind him, no doubt. So they're always going to have something on the front burner as well as the back burner, just to be ready.
Was Pat Patterson still putting those together at that time?
Yeah, sure was. We were all in the room when Pat and I think it was Pat, and I'm trying to remember who else was there at that time. Droese, but as far as putting it together, mainly it was Pat.
Man, it's always interesting to see how one of those come together because it's so many moving parts, and you got to be out in this order and in that order, and it's meticulously planned. But then you only hear about of maybe 3 or 4 errors that happened over 30 some years, which is remarkable.
Yeah, and even when they happen, nobody else is aware of it except the people who made the errors, which is kind of cool. So there's a lot of things and a lot of elements that took place then that just are obsolete now, and that's going to happen in every business, every sport. You have to progress and evolve and make it bigger and better.
Another person who hasn't exactly won Royal Rumbles but has more than enough Royal Rumble moments to go around is former Fightful podcaster Shane Helms. He's doing some other stuff now, some WWE production, but he's had some very special moments in the Royal Rumble, including his return in 2018 after being away from the company for 8 years. Shortly after that, I was able to speak to him about what went into that Royal Rumble and how it came about. Now, later in the show, you're going to hear a very extensive interview about all of his Royal Rumble appearances before that. But the most recent also led to a very special moment where he was able to reunite with Roman Reigns, who is the brother of his late tag team partner, Rosie. Take a look.
How did the Rumble thing unfold?
Yeah.
Me using social media, and two, not actually in a, I don't know, it wasn't a self-serving thing. It was just me being funny. It happened after Enzo Amore got fired, so they didn't have a cruiserweight champion. So I put up this picture of me holding the WCW cruiserweight title and the WWE cruiserweight title. I was like, hey, I know a guy. And that, of course, that kind of became one of my new catchphrases for the year. I know a guy. And that picture went viral, as the silly stuff happens. And, I got a call from WWE. And, they had thought about me in Rumbles previously, but I was either under contract or injured. And so I couldn't do it. But this time, just perfect timing. It was more of a perfect timing thing as well. I popped in their head because of the picture. I happened to be free. I happened to be healthy. And there you go.
You were one of those guys who was familiar to fans of multiple generations, obviously, because you had been in WCW, you'd been in WWE, and you had been on Impact as recently as last year, but hadn't returned to WWE prior, so you were a prime name for one of those spots, one of those surprise Royal Rumble spots. Your spot there was, a favorite of a lot of people. At what point do you find out, hey, you're getting in there and you're going to be working essentially with John Cena in the Royal Rumble?
Probably about maybe 30 minutes before the actual Rumble match started. We were hid, the entire time. Some of the guys in the match didn't even know we were there and were going to be there. And so about 30 minutes before the actual match, the pay-per-view had already started. They sneak us in the building, and that was a cool moment too, because I get to see the boys' reaction to me, and they kind of lit up. Some of the guys lit up, and some of the production people that I knew, from being there nearly a decade before, they knew me, and they were like, oh, Hurricane, like I can't, are you back? Are you back? Like what I heard was, are you back for good? Are you back for good? And I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just here for the night. I don't know what this is going to lead to, and so I mean that was a super special moment on a personal level. The fans didn't get to see that, but on a personal level, that was very cool. And then, I talked about this a couple times. The idea was me to get in there with Cena, and there was going to be a couple other guys. It was like, think about who you could do something the best with. So of course I suggested Cena.
Yeah, why not?
Well, because it was kind of it was a play off my Rumble experience, not Rumble experience, but Rumble moment with Austin and Triple H. And they were the two biggest guys in the industry at the time. Along with Rock. I mean, you know what I'm saying, but they're two of the very top. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be in there, that's what I would do. And Cena at first was actually kind of, I don't want to be the one to throw you out. And I was like, dude, I said, whether I'm King Kong or not, I think I am.
Yeah.
I got to go after Godzilla. And he started laughing. And I knew I kind of had him right there. And two, this is how cool Cena was. If he would have said no, that spot doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
They wanted me to, like I say, it's going to be quick, in and out, reenact, like I said, the spot that I did in Atlanta. And but if Cena says no, it doesn't happen. But that's how cool he was. And he was laughing, and and I was like, yeah. And I didn't go through everything I would do, because I said I'll hurricane it up, and you be you, and we'll be good. And it just worked out perfectly. And that pop was ridiculous. And to this day, when people come up and they still ask me about it, I do the same thing I did with the Atlanta Rumble. I'll ask them who won, and nine times out of 10, they can't tell me who won the Rumble, but they remember my spot.
I would go as far as to say that was one of the most fun Royal Rumble matches I've ever seen, period. Like, from an execution standpoint, it was just a great Rumble to watch. How much had you worked with Cena in the past? Because I can't really remember any outside of some Battle Royal.
That was it. I think that's the first time we've ever touched. I mean, there could be a Battle Royal where we, where we got hands on each other or something, but I can't remember all of those. But as far as just one-on-one, it just being us, that was the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I knew you all had been in a couple Royal Rumbles, and then there was that, there was the Tag Team Championship Battle Royal where the Hardys won the tag titles that you all were in, but, obviously no big interaction, so that was cool for me to see, especially for two guys who had been in the WWE for 8 years together and had never touched. That does not happen. That just,
right, yeah.
You never see that, so it's kind of cool to hear that Cena was like, I don't know if I want that heat.
But, that said, he's like, I don't want to be the guy to throw it, because he's the good guy.
Yeah.
He's the ultimate babyface. Like, I don't want to throw it at the superhero. Then when I explained it to him, you can see him kind of grinning and lighting up. He got it. And that's just cool, because, his position, he could have easily said no to anything, And I would have had to accept that. And I would have been cool if he said no. I would have figured something else out. But, that was me. I knew this was my moment. I was going to swing for the fences and try to create the best out of it.
You started
create the best out of an already cool situation.
Sure. Picture emerged of you two sharing a moment after the Royal Rumble. That had to be special for you, considering how close you were with his brother.
Yeah, I got to talk to him. I went to a house show after Rosie passed, and we had a moment there, and we kind of were able to express how I felt, and condolences and that sort of thing. So, but it was like nothing I wanted to get heavy into when somebody's got to go to work. You don't want to go have this real conversation and then, oh yeah, by the way, go out and risk your life in the ring here. I don't want to bring him down too much. But it was, we said very positive things and very cool things. And at the Rumble, it wasn't like we was having this really deep conversation or anything. Yeah. We were just talking. Two guys talking. but because of the history, of me with his brother, it did add a little special meaning to that picture. It looks like we're almost about to embrace,
It does.
It does look like but I mean, that's just him being a good guy. When you talk, he listens.
I don't know that any single photo out of that Royal Rumble got more attention than that one. I mean, it was everywhere because of everything that had happened, and now, I mean, it is a touching photo.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, man. And too, like I said, when I see him, and I think that was my caption there. Every time I see Roman, I see Rosie, and I can't help it.
Yeah.
And it's not like I see it and I get sad. I have a lot of, 99% of my memories of Rosie are funny. Yeah. So I see him and I think about good things, But then, I see him and I miss Rosie too. So
Shane Helms will be quick to remind you later on in the show that superstars eliminate him. And one of those people that eliminated him has had a little bit more success, at least in finishing off the Royal Rumble match, Triple H. Now, he's got a much different role these days than he used to as an in-ring competitor, and we focus a little bit more on that in the brief time that I had to speak with him about the Royal Rumble. He's heading up NXT. NXT takes a lot of inspiration from nostalgia, from history, and from what's successful now. But he says that he doesn't necessarily want to do an NXT Rumble, but I also did ask him about the process of who from NXT gets to be in the Royal Rumble. Have you all ever considered doing Royal Rumble as a standalone NXT event? I mean, on the women's side last year, there were more representatives from NXT than any brand, and if not, do you have any say in who it is that goes to the Royal Rumble from the NXT brand when it does happen?
There's always conversations about that as the Rumble gets closer every year. Look, I'm a big fan of having separation. Now that doesn't mean that's the sole answer, but I'm a big fan of having some separation where there's some uniqueness. I love the fact that Raw and SmackDown have Survivor Series. I love the fact that we have War Games. It's different. It just has a different vibe and a different feel. I love the fact that the Rumble is the big thing that leads you to Mania. I think having those differences are great, and as you are building NXT up into its own brand more and more, having those differences be stark is great. I think when you have moments like the Rumble where they can all come together and have those moments, that's even cooler. So as that gets closer, I'm sure we'll have a lot of conversations about who we feel should be in there and who we feel we want to give that opportunity to.
One of those peoples that they gave an opportunity to in 2020 was Shotzi Blackheart. She had a breakout 2020 year, and it was really led off by that appearance in Minute Maid Park. She tells me that she only learned that she would be in the Royal Rumble the day before. Other people that I spoke to within NXT said that they actually found out a few days before via the internal talent relations app, but they didn't actually know if they'd be in the Royal Rumble until the night before. They went to what is usually a rehearsal, but there wasn't much rehearsing. They broke the match into two pieces and sort of walked through it. The people that weren't in the match that much were just told what they would do. The people that were in the match for a longer period of time would kind of walk through everything. But there were also people that were brought there that weren't in the Royal Rumble match at all. Kaylee Ray was a person that I heard was brought to rehearsals, but actually didn't end up making the Royal Rumble match. However, like I mentioned, Shotzi Blackheart did. She spoke to me about it. You were a part of that. How was that for you to be told you're in a Royal Rumble match? Who gives you the news and says, hey, by the way, you got signed a few months ago. You're in the Royal Rumble.
Yeah. I mean, that was like a text message the night before. Hey, get on a plane. You're going to Texas. And then getting there and being like, all right, here's your number. And I'm like, what?
In a baseball stadium at that.
In front of too many people.
So how do you prepare mentally for that? How do you even, do you get any sleep the night before?
No. I was just up in my hotel room just being like, is this real? What is my life?
I mean, was that one of the types of matches? Because, I mean, I know that for someone your age, War Games maybe wasn't around for a while when you were younger, but the Royal Rumble was there every single year. And as your career gets started, they kick off women's Royal Rumbles. I mean, like, did you have like visions of what you would do when you finally got into a match like that?
Oh, no, not at all. I really didn't even have time to think about it. But the Royal Rumble has always been my favorite pay-per-view. Like, it has the most surprises. It's so much fun to watch. And like, I was just ecstatic when girls got introduced finally. And to be a part of, you know, the beginning of that, insane.
So when you're in a match like that, obviously you're interacting with some people that maybe you don't get to run into every single day. Did you get any interesting feedback or any advice or any help from anybody that you looked up to, or maybe just that you just met?
I mean, I got some good forearms from Beth Phoenix, and that was enough for me.
And now she's calling your matches on Wednesdays.
I know, it's wild. She's like, you know, cheering me on and then, you know, beating me up. It's great.
Shotzi Blackheart was a surprise we saw at the Royal Rumble. Kaylee Ray clearly didn't work out. But there are surprises and plans and swerves that get nixed all the time in the Royal Rumble. And in 2020, we actually saw one. The night before the Royal Rumble, images started to leak from outside of Minute Maid Park that showed MVP's Titantron. He would show up. He would be a surprise in the 2020 Rumble. And like Court Bauer mentioned earlier, he worked himself into a full-time deal. However, Victoria's Titantron played, but she had no idea that this was happening until social media blew up. She had never been contacted for the Royal Rumble, was never planned, and whether it was a swerve or they were just testing out something, Lisa Marie Varon walked us through what would have been her first WWE appearance in over a decade. I know you had to have seen this because I saw it a million times. WWE was testing out Titantrons at the Royal Rumble, and apparently your name popped up on there, which led everybody to go, Victoria's in the Royal Rumble. Were you supposed to be in the Royal Rumble?
I found that out from social media as well. I was like, what? I go, maybe my Titantron had a lot of coloring. I don't know, but maybe they did that to throw people off.
Yeah.
I don't know, because, you know, like, it's hard to keep a secret in wrestling. Something always leaks. You know what I mean? And which is a shame. You know,
it's not a shame. That's what I rely on.
You do? I don't like to know what the finish is and stuff like that. I'm like, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. I like surprises.
Yeah, we don't do that as much as I'll take the temperature of the situation. Like, I'll talk to people in WWE and say, how did you feel about this that happened or this that happened? That's more what we rely on, because to me, things change so much that if I report that something's going to happen and then it doesn't happen, I don't have any credibility.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I get you. I get it. I get it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you're giving false news. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
So you were not supposed to be in the Royal Rumble.
I was on the Jericho cruise.
You were, weren't you?
Yeah. I was in Miami. And I was trying to stay off my phone because, you know, I wanted in the moment. I was visiting family, and I'm like, you know, we're always glued to our phones.
Yeah.
And so I went back and I missed a ton of emails, text messages, everything. And I was like, what? They must be testing out their coloring on their Titantron, because my picture came up there. But I was already on the Jericho. I mean, in Miami. Yeah. The following day, I was going to go on the Jericho cruise. You know, so I could.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I remember that the Jericho cruise wrapped up like around the day before or something, because I remember people bringing that up, and they're like, oh, well, the Jericho cruise just docked or something like that, so maybe she made it over to Houston or something like that. But did you ever talk to anybody within the company like, hey, what the hell was up with that?
No, not in the company. No, just on social media, just going, oh, you know, I didn't respond because I don't want to. I don't know what to say. You know, because I don't know the vaccine, because I'm not part of the company anymore, so I couldn't tell you why they were testing it out, you know. But
commentary isn't the only aspect of production, obviously, and it's not always as smooth as WWE would like. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with 2016 when AJ Styles debuted after years, over 15 years outside of WWE, working all around the world. and production missed him walking out. They missed the Titantron. Instead, they were focused in on Roman Reigns' face and reaction. As a result, WWE had to release unseen footage of AJ Styles' Royal Rumble entrance. I spoke with a production employee who said that this caused major issues. There was a lot of heat surrounding this. And then the situation repeated itself 4 years later when Edge showed up. WWE's obsession with camera cuts caused the company to miss Edge's first spear in an actual match in a decade. And again, we saw the unseen footage of Edge's Royal Rumble return. So it doesn't always go so smooth. It didn't go so smooth for Duke the Dumpster Droese either. Now, this may be one out of left field that you think, well, what does he know about the Royal Rumble? Well, Duke the Dumpster Droese was a part of the 1996 Royal Rumble where he actually beat Triple H in a match on the free-for-all, where the loser got the number 1 entry. Number 30 went to the winner, which was Duke the Dumpster Droese. However, 1996 was also the year that a fresh Steve Austin, then known as the Ringmaster, accidentally got eliminated well before his time. I talked to Duke the Dumpster Droese about his experience. Yeah, you wrestled Triple H on the free-for-all, 96 Rumble, and I loved the stakes for that. Winner enters 30th, loser enters first. You would work with him, at least on the house show circuit, for months and months after that. I know that you all even had a dark cage match, which I want to talk a little bit about. But what was that like, being told, hey, you're going to be on the free-for-all, which was used to sell that Royal Rumble show, which is a major thing for WWF?
Yes. At the time, I was ecstatic about it. I was like, because it wasn't just a free-for-all. It was, we're going to set up this angle, and you're going to go on to another pay-per-view with him. I was like, finally, I get to do a pay-per-view singles match. It's not just the Royal Rumble for once. But, you know, it was just kind of weird the way it went about. But, yeah, we wrestled in a lot of house shows, and we kind of went back and forth, you know, winning and losing against each other. We were trying a lot of different things, and it was always fun to work with Paul, because he was always willing to do anything. He busted his ass for me. He flew all over the place because I threw him all over the place. And he never complained. He never complained once. He took all the bumps, and you know, I gotta say, he was a champ in that respect. He took them bumps, that's for sure, because Duke threw his ass all over the place. So. Yeah,
and you're not a small man, needless to say, and he's not either. He's a really big dude, and I think that, like, at that time, I was just like, I had no concept of how big pro wrestlers were, because I was seeing you two fairly close in size. I didn't realize you're both gigantic people tossing each other around the ring, and like you said, he's bumping everywhere, like taking the trash compactor and all that stuff. Like that
power slams, press slams, spine busters, everything. He took it all.
So you all go to the Royal Rumble, and you've been in a couple Royal Rumbles. How exactly are those laid out? Who goes and tells you this is when you're in, this is when you're out, and kind of lays all that stuff out for you?
Pat Patterson. Pat Patterson sets those up. He sits everybody down. Usually it's in the catering area, and he'll have like a big white dry erase board, and he'll give everybody the order that you're going out to the ring. Then he will tell you when. He will say, okay, you go out of the ring after you see this wrestler go out, and he tells you who's going to throw you out of the ring. That's basically how it works. It's like what number you go to the ring, and then basically what number you go out, because you watch to see and you go after a certain person, and you may make sure the right person also that throws you out of the ring, and that's how it works. And then the rest of it's just a big old mishmash in the ring, and people goofing off and making each other laugh, basically, is what it is, and ribbing each other.
So I know that they had Diesel and Kama eliminate you pretty quickly in 96. Were you out there when Steve Austin accidentally got eliminated? Was that around the same time? Like, because he's mentioned that a few times, like he was supposed to be in the Final Four, but it got messy, and he had to look up at Sean and be like, hey, I'm out, buddy. We can't do it.
I don't remember. I mean, I kind of remember that happening, but I don't remember what year was that.
That was 96.
Oh, so that was the year I got. Oh, yeah.
That was the year you
Yeah, I
got
remember
30th,
there was.
yeah.
Yeah, there was some. You know what though? The funny thing about stuff like that in the wrestling business is the boys in the back are very skeptical. We're like, all right, was that a work or was that a shoot? So we're always very skeptical. So we were unsure. And I think that was the approach that that was the attitude that the boys in the back had about it. We were like, yeah. They're trying to work us and the fans. But yeah, I do vaguely remember that happening. I didn't remember that he went out of order though.
Yeah, and the year before, you spent a little bit more time in there. They probably don't have it down to like a second. It's probably just a general time that you're in there.
Yeah, and some people take longer to go out before you than they're supposed to. It's like you'll be sitting there, and like you got to get out of there before a certain number of people are in the ring, or they're going to start setting up spots with the last 4 people, but the guy that's supposed to go out before you is still just lollygagging around for more airtime, and he's not going out yet or taking his time. So, you just kind of got people start yelling at each other, get out, get out.
When I sought out to get more information about the Royal Rumble, I didn't just want to hear about the big moments. I didn't just want to hear about the winners or accidents or anything like that. I wanted to find out how the Royal Rumble worked. And when you find out how the Royal Rumble worked, you have to find people that were involved in a variety of roles. Jake Hager, formerly Jack Swagger, was a part of several Royal Rumbles, and he straight up told me he didn't like them. He didn't want to be a part of them. They were very hard. They were very dangerous to work, but they also helped him learn how to work matches that would end up being bigger battle royals in the future. But also, he said there's a unique pay structure associated with it, and the shortest amount of time that he spent in the Royal Rumble ended up being the most he got paid.
There's depending on who you're in there with, which as it is with anything, you'll have levels of creativity and you'll have levels of restriction. Definitely not one of my favorite matches, just because the way they did it at the Fed, there was like a group of 3 or 4 guys who decide the whole storyline throughout the thing, and then you would try to implement your stuff on it to make it fit to your storyline type deal. And it can be easy or it can be difficult. The time I was in there the shortest where Lesnar just threw me out, I really think that was my favorite because that was the most I got paid for a Royal Rumble.
Really?
The shortest time. Yeah.
Why do you think that was? Do you think there was any specific reason? Because I know they used to do it based on buy rates or whatever that may be, but I know that also changed a lot after the network was instituted.
Yeah, they started lying to us after they instituted the network. Who knows how they decided to pay us? But for some reason, that was a good payday for me, and it was literally 7 seconds. It was like duck a clothesline, F5, see ya.
Man, and you ended up working. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, Mike Chioda came running over to me, and he was so upset. He was like, Swags, what was that? I just turned to him, I just got paid, Kiki. What do you want?
And you worked a match very similar to that in the Casino Battle Royal at All Out, which is very similar, and I love the change they made to where they brought them out one by one, even in the groups, because I thought for production it made a lot more sense. Did your experience in the Royal Rumble or anything kind of prepare you for that, or is this a completely different beast?
That's definitely a different beast. They say every pro wrestling match is different, and every gimmick match is definitely different. So that was a little bit different, but being in the Royal Rumbles definitely helped me prepare with that and help the other people set their stuff up. And you really have to you're limited because there's people in the ring. You want to do some cool stuff and make an entrance, but you have people in the ring, so you got to be careful of ankles, about throwing people and hiding in the corner so they can have the spotlight. So there's a lot of little things that go into it. The main thing is, I feel like, is you don't want to do too much. You don't want to get too much stuff in. I was proud of what Sonny and I did because it made a big shock and it made a big splash, and it was just something as easy as him turning it around on me and throwing me out. And I was like, that's all it needs to be.
Kevin Owens has been an integral name in WWE for the last several years, but doesn't necessarily have those big Royal Rumble moments. But he's not short on thoughts on the Royal Rumble. He is a part of a newer era where things have changed, and you see some of the newer producers collaborate with guys like Michael Hayes in order to put their own spin on a match that's been around for over 30 years. And when you've been around for over 30 years, you have to innovate. Just like Tom Prichard said earlier, you're always looking for the next thing. You're always looking for the new thing. 2020 saw a lot of new match types across AEW and WWE, from Stadium Stampede to Fight Pit, I Quit in Hell in a Cell. There are matches all over the place now, and it's the most innovative year that we saw in wrestling match types in over a decade and a half. Royal Rumble is trustworthy, but Kevin Owens thinks that they could make a little bit of a change. Were you a big Royal Rumble fan?
Yeah, of course. It's one of the most exciting pay-per-views for everyone. I think everybody would agree. There's something about a 10 count and then something happening that's just, whatever it's in whatever setting it is, people always love that. So that I was no different with the Royal Rumble. And yeah, I love being in those matches. And like you said, I've only gotten to do it a few times because, in other shows, either I was having a singles match or one of them I was actually out for. I was injured at the time. But yeah, I really love the Royal Rumble, and it's always an exciting time because when it comes around too, WrestleMania is around the corner as well. So it's kind of like the first step to our big season, if you want to call it that, even though we don't have an off season. So it's really a big season all year round.
There's an overwhelming sense of optimism around that event. Like, everybody's like, anything can happen. You never know what might change. What did you see change from the first one you were in like 2016 to like the most recent one? Because I mean, you went from arena to stadium, but how have things changed in how they were like made or produced?
I don't think so. Honestly, it's just it's so many people to contend with and so many stories to tell at one time. So there's no way it won't be chaotic. Yeah. It always is chaotic, but it always turns out to be pretty exciting and pretty memorable. And to me, I think that's always how it's going to be, the process, because you got 30 guys in one match and you have so many things to accomplish. I kind of wish they had done the 40-man Royal Rumble one year, which I really liked. I kind of wish we'd go back to that. I think the more people involved, the better. And the longer that match is, the more fun it is to me. So if I were to pick any changes to make, I would just add more people. But yeah, it's really cool.
The first person that I spoke to for the Inside the Royal Rumble feature when it was a concept was actually Shane Helms in 2016 when we had a podcast. We were moving to more subject-based content, and I was just so excited to talk about the Royal Rumble. I didn't want to wait till January, so we did it in December 2016. This is the most extensive, but he goes through so much. The Triple H Stone Cold Steve Austin elimination. The 2004 appearance where he jumps in, does a quick move to Matt Hardy, gets eliminated by Matt Morgan. We also go through his individual elimination, setting it up, and that 2005 spot where Daniel Puder got his ass kicked. But who was out after Daniel Puder? That was Shane Helms, and he caught some residual ass whipping. I encourage you guys, make sure that you listen to what he says. He is a wealth of knowledge, especially about Royal Rumbles, as he has truly maximized his minutes in the ring. The 2002 Royal Rumble, I will say, it didn't last too long, but you had a moment that people still talk about today, is still shown today, and really is, I thought that was a very good Rumble. And it was the perfect thing for your character. It was really cool. You come in, you got a good reaction from the crowd. You stalk Triple H and Steve Austin, who are there. You do the goozle. You're about to choke slam them, and they look at you like you were the dumbest son of a bitch in the world. And they heave you. And, of course, it sets up all the puns. They got the, look at him fly. Of course he's flying. He's got a cape. What was that experience like for you? And how did you go about setting that up? Who came up with that spot?
Oh, that was 100% me. Everything in that ring. I mean, as short as it was, that was all my idea. Pat Patterson helps book the Rumbles, and that was the Bushwhacker spot. You always got somebody come in, they're gonna get out quick. So that came to be known as the Bushwhacker spot. After, I can't remember which one did it first. It might have been Luca Bush. It had to be Luca Bush, but imagine that.
Yeah, he came in and he walked, and then he walked in the ring, got tossed out, and kept walking.
Never stopped. Yeah. So this was going to be something similar, but I didn't have no time frame. I wasn't given a time frame. All I knew was that it was going to be Austin and Triple H in the ring, and Triple H was the one who came out before me. Okay, so now to dive into the inside of a performer's mind and a pro wrestler. So okay, this is going to be Triple H's return too. The return from the quad injury, I think.
Yeah.
And so we know, or at least I know and predict, he's going to get this massive reaction. And so when you're the person following a massive reaction, and I hadn't really popped as the Hurricane yet. I'm still in the face paint. I'm getting giggles and stuff like that, and it's working, and I know it's working. But I popped a little bit better after that. So this is still in the building phases of what this character can be. So I know it's like, man, I'm following this great big pop, because you rather follow like some shitty pop. That way yours by comparison is going to seem better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, oh man, following the big pop, it's like, okay, well, whatever. Now I know I'm going to be in there with the two top guys, the two top guys, in the company. So not just any two, the two.
The two.
Yes. Okay. Well, now I got to figure something out here. So I came up with that idea. Now also keep in mind that I'm still a new guy in the company, still fresh face. You know what I mean? So, and you got to be tricky, or you got to be, tactful when you're going up suggesting spots with the top two guys in the company with your monkey ass, I'm still a new kid. I'm still a new face there. So you got to be tactful about that. But I knew it was a good idea. And so I talked to Kurt quite a bit. Kurt Angle was the first one I went to, because I had an amateur background, nowhere near as extensive as his, but we had that in common. I would, he's a cool guy, and he was someone I went to. Told him the idea, and he popped huge. It's like, yeah, that's great. Go tell Steve. Like, I think in my mind, I wanted him to just offer to go tell Steve for me, or suggest it for me. But, of course he did. Yeah, go tell Steve. I'm like, damn it. Okay. So I go to Austin. Austin goes, I sit there telling him, Austin, big pop from him. Yeah, he goes, yeah, go run it by Pat. I'm like, damn. So now I got to go tell Pat.
You're trying to be the kid who's like, can I stay over? No, you asked.
Yeah, and so then I go to Pat Patterson, and I run it by him. Oh my God, I love it. Crowd go banana. I'm like, damn. So now I got to go tell Triple H too. And so I go and run it for the fourth time. Like, yeah, here's the idea. I want to see what you think. Say, oh, that's great. He said, that's great. That's perfect. And but that's over the course of like 2 hours, because everybody was always busy when I went to them, like they were never just free. So it was all this anguish, because you don't want one guy to go, who the fuck do you think you are suggesting such a thing to me? You know what I mean? You don't want to come off like that. And people like me anyway. So, anyway, when it worked, all I remember was being at the curtain, and I was just like, please pop, when they play my music.
Yeah.
Because you got Austin and Triple H in there going at it. I was just like, please like me.
So what was Vince's reaction? What was Vince's reaction to the spot after it happened? Like, how did he think it was executed?
I came to the back, got the big thumbs up, but even better, the next day, they were watching it in catering, and Vince isn't always in catering. A lot of times he eats his meal in his office, and he happened to be in there and was watching, and that spot unfolded again, and he just goes, now that's good shit. But I tell you what I said when I came through the curtain. When I came through the curtain, I just looked right at him and said, I almost had those motherfuckers. Skedaddled. So
that was perfect for your character.
Yeah, everybody. Been a good spot for anybody, but like with my character, the fact that I'm going for the choke slam and I'm gonna get him, And then they're like, and you can see Austin is all into it for a second. He's and then he's like, what the fuck? You know, just perfect for them. Those guys, they made it. Their reactions made it. So, you know, respect to them for being professionals and letting a silly ass kid like me, you know, call the shots there.
What was your reaction to being told that you would be in your first Royal Rumble?
Oh, I was super excited, man. Everybody wants to be in that one. You know, I mean, with the Rumble now, I mean, when it started, it was just that match. That pay-per-view was just about that match, you know. As it grew, there were other, like, important matches there. So if you weren't in it, at least you were going to be, you know, maybe in an important match. What you don't want to be is in either. You know, you don't want to be left on the sidelines. So I was always excited to be in those matches just because I knew, especially like when you did the brand split, there were certain guys we were never going to be in the ring with again. You know what I mean? Because they kept that brand split really, they really stuck with it there back in those days. And so, and the Rumble was the only time you're going to be able to get with guys. That's the beauty of some battle royals, you know, because there might be some guys you're never going to lock up with. You know, that's the only place I ever got to lock up with Eddie Guerrero. So that's the beauty of those matches.
Who tells you, like, in that first match, like, are you told, hey, you're going to be entering here, we got to get you the hell out soon? Is that when you start, like, maybe the wheels in motion saying, okay, I'll do this thing, the double choke slam? Or were you just told you'll be in the Rumble and then you decide, hey, this will be a way to get me out quick?
Well, we knew the story was going to be Austin and Hunter. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got Triple H, and two, you got to. Yeah, I mean, I was very realistic about what my role was in the company, especially at that point. You know, there's a big backstory on why I went along with that Hurricane character. I mean, that was never what I wanted to be growing up, was a superhero. You know, I mean, I wanted to be a superhero because I was a comic book fan, but I never thought I'd be wearing a cape and a mask in a ring. Okay, you know, this Rumble's about Hunter and Austin. You know, that's what this is about. And I'm a little bit player in here, but how can I make the most out of the scene that I'm in? And that's what it was about. How can I make the most out of that? And you know, you better get creative in that, because you know, if you only got a short moment, you better make that count. Like if you're going to be in the Rumble for a long time, you can go in there and dick around some, and you know, you can have time to do a little bit of some good spot here and a good spot here. But if you only got a short moment, it better count for something, you know.
So you weren't in the 2003 Royal Rumble, and you weren't in a match on there. Now, I looked at this and I saw like Spike Dudley. I saw Spike Dudley had faced Steven Richards, and you had like a little short, very brief like TV program with Steven Richards. You had faced him the Monday before. You faced him the night after. Were you given a reason why you were left off the show or anything like that?
No, you know, I mean, sometimes there's no reason, you know, and sometimes it is that if they put you in a spot and they don't want to beat you. So sometimes it's actually a good reason. You don't want that because that don't help your paycheck at all. You always want to be on the show, but sometimes like, all right, well, we can't beat him. And so we'll just, you know, put somebody else in there, or, you know, whatever the case. There could be a lot of good reasons. There was never anything bad. I was never like fucking up or anything. So, but if they weren't doing anything like super solid with me at the time, you know.
Was that discouraging to you?
Yeah, probably a little bit. You know, you always, I mean, everybody wants to be in the mix, you know. So anytime you're not, of course, it's a little bit, but you got to look at the reasoning why, and you know.
You were in the mix in 2004. You got your first real offense in a Royal Rumble match against Matt Hardy. A flying body press, beautiful. Then Matt Morgan, who looked bigger than ever.
Oh yeah.
He was no-selling some of your punches, then you poked him in the eye. He caught you off the ropes, and he dumped you out 19 seconds. Now, the real story in this, you held your leg when you fell out. That looked nasty, that fall. Did you get hurt on that?
No, not at all. But I knew that it was a weird landing. And so I started really overselling my knee, and got to the back, and like it was evidently it was so good they had the trainers all lined up to come in and check me out. They thought I blew my knee completely out. But I was good.
Oh yeah, I thought your knee was gone there. I remember watching it live. I saw that, and I think John Cena's elimination. I was like, they lost two guys. Their knees are both blown out. But
I sold you a ticket, kid. That's what happened now.
You did, absolutely. You came in and you hit that body press on Matt Hardy. Is that something you all go over before, or do you just see Matt there and you're like,
no, you're not going to go and do a damn body press into a Rumble without having knowing something's coming now. So that again, having a short moment, you got to make it count. You got to do something big. And two, like I wanted to do something. They wanted to do something with Morgan, and this one was specifically they wanted to get me out pretty quick because the bodies were they were getting a lot of people, but it wasn't nothing like I mean, one of those where I'm not winning, so why I don't get paid by the hour. Let's get in and get out. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they had Matt Morgan come in there out of like a house of fire, and then he literally wasn't on TV for like a year after that, which was kind of weird. But
he didn't necessarily take care of me on that spot. So.
It would look nasty, yeah.
He's a strong bastard, man.
Also a fellow wrestling podcaster, although our show is much better than his. 2005. This was an interesting show. You got an interesting reaction here because this was right after Hardcore Holly, Chris Benoit, and Eddie Guerrero had beaten the living shit out of Daniel Puder. Before we went on the air, I showed you a still frame of Daniel Puder taking a back suplex. He did it with his arms out like this, his head back like this, and his legs spread like he was the last girl at the bar trying to find somebody. Luckily, he saved his own neck. Did you know that they were going to beat the living shit out of him before they got there? I asked you because apparently they were in the mood to keep it going because they chopped the living shit out of you as well.
Yeah, I remember them chopping the shit out of a Puder, and I was like, oh, I remember thinking, I'm going to get some of this when I get in there. I don't know if, I didn't talk to them about chopping the shit out of me, and I didn't know that they were going to chop the shit out of Puder. Puder, for some reason, was one of those guys that was getting a little bit of heat in the back, but I don't think for anything, I don't think he meant to or for like doing anything really malicious. Just that's how that locker room happens sometimes. I remember they were beating the shit out of him, though. And I remember when they got me in the corner, Eddie chopped me and he hit me right in the lips.
Yeah.
And that whole spot came together in the ring. We didn't call how I got eliminated at all. I tried to talk to Eddie during the day, and he had a lot going on. And he just, he kept kind of like brushing me off a little bit. Not mean, just he was really busy. And again, this is one of those times I knew I was only going to be in there for a little bit, so I wanted to make it count, And but Benoit was a buddy, so I went and talked to him. I was like, yeah, man, Eddie's kind of he don't seem like he's in a good mood. He's like, yeah, don't worry about it. He gets like that. And but when we got in there and we started bumping around and doing our thing, there was a moment when this was the perfect moment to get me out of there. Like I felt it, they felt it. So without saying anything, three minds came together and it worked out the way we needed it to.
Yeah, you're officially credited as being eliminated by both of them. Benoit whipped you into Eddie, who tossed you over. You hit a blockbuster out of the corner before that, so got a little offense as well. When you're eliminated that early in the match, do you go watch the rest of it, or do you just kind of fuck off for the rest of the night?
First of all, when I did that move, it's called the overcast. So research your shit, Mr. Sapp.
You mean to tell me that's not the buff blockbuster?
I stole that shit. Took it. Now I would make people kick out on one.
With a frozen bottle of water. You took that shit.
It frozen? Don't listen to his bullshit. Little plastic bottle of water.
You treated him like Debo. You're like, my move, punk.
Yep. So what was the question? I don't even remember. But once again, you notice it took two of the biggest superstars in WWE to eliminate me. I mean, look at the people it takes. Triple H, Austin. Then you got Mac Morgan's gigantic blueprint ass. Then you got Benoit and Eddie. I'm just saying, I noticed the pattern here.
Well, we're getting to another big name here in a little bit, too. After you're eliminated that early, do you go back, watch the rest of the match, or do you just fuck off? Like, what's the process after? Because that was pretty early in the match.
No, you go back and watch it. I mean, I've never stopped being a fan. I want to watch it too, and it's a damn process getting all that shit gear I wear. I mean, all that stuff I wear. So it's a process getting all that stuff off right away. I think normally I go and try to wash my face real quick and get that makeup off because it burns my eyes. But I try to watch as much, especially that Rumble.
Well, especially that Rumble, it had an interesting finish, and a lot of people they wonder if that finish was supposed to happen, if it was planned. WWE says even today on their true story of the Royal Rumble, that wasn't planned, but you couldn't have planned those two hitting at the same time any better. John Cena,
That was
Batista.
perfect. Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah,
Like, did you happen to see any of the reactions from anybody backstage when that happened? Because a few people had to know who was going to win and be like, oh, shit, what's going on here?
We just saw the massive, like, what the hell's going on? And I was kind of at a monitor that was away from Gorilla. So I got up and went down to Gorilla once I saw Vince walking there.
For a while, he walked there.
Yeah, for a while. And then once he heard himself getting in the ring, then we were like, then, the tone took on a different, and we couldn't really tell what happened because I didn't see him get hurt. All I know was when I was trying to get the Gorilla, then I saw him sitting in the ring. And I was going, what the fuck's going on here? And because it was, obviously it looked fucking crazy. And then starting to realize that, oh man, he's hurt, And nobody wants, no matter what, we see one of us is seriously injured, that changes the tone backstage. No matter what the crowds, if they're reacting to it or not, once one of us is hurt, that changes the tone backstage. So now we're no longer worried about the finish of the match. We're worried about Vince at this point.
So he was away from TV for a little while after that. Like, had you been there and him not be present for a while?
No, that's the first time. That's the first time he was ever not there because then he tore his other leg coming back or something.
Yeah,
like he walking back because he refused to be helped was the story that I was told, and then he ended up tearing the other quad. So that's a tough bastard, man. Yeah, that's the only time. That was the first time there that there was a Vince absent, but he was back as soon as he could. As soon as he could come back and be mobile, he came back.
What changes were made after that? Like in his absence, who was running the show?
I mean, he still had his input. He just couldn't physically be there to do what he did. A lot of the preparation for the shows, most of the preparation for the shows happens in Stanford anyway. So I'm sure he was at the office and stuff like that, or he would have the writers and creative come to his house, which he would do a lot anyway. So his input was still there. Just certain last minute decisions, if they had to happen on the fly, probably went to Hunter, Stephanie, people in charge.
In this Rumble, you had a little interaction with Sabu. Then you and Sabu tried to toss over Edge. Then you worked with Edge a little bit, went around. Kane came in. He was the House of Fire. Ends up hitting you with a tilt side slam. Now, is that something like, they do this a lot. Like they did it actually with Matt Morgan before you came into the match. But these guys will come in, they'll hit people with a bunch of stuff. Is it just the type of thing you make eye contact, you run at him type of deal? Because there's no way you can really plan that, is there?
Yeah, there's a lot of just feel the groove there going on. Now keep in mind, I didn't know we were really going to talk about the Rumbles, and I haven't seen any of this shit in years. So I'm sitting there going, man, I don't remember this at all. There's a lot of I don't remember it.
Do you remember that tilt-a-whirl side slam you took? Because it looked like maybe now I'm just hypothesizing here. It looked like once he got you up, you were maybe like Tombstone. And then he slammed you, and it was like, "Oh shit!"
No, I worked with Kane quite a bit. You might not notice, Mr. Sapp, but I'm pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed this, but I was there for 10 years. I was okay.
You end up getting tossed by Lamont, Ernest Miller's old manager. Nobody important.
Come on now.
Actually, it was King Booker. It was King Booker, another Hall of Famer.
Dastardly King. I'm just saying, you might notice a pattern. Except for Matt Morgan.
You missed the 08 Rumble, and 09 you just weren't in it. 2010 you just weren't in it. What were your feelings of being skipped over in the 2009-2010 Royal Rumble?
That's because I was on that ECW show and it fucking sucked, and I hated it.
Shane Helms might not have won the Royal Rumble, but a guy named Drew McIntyre did. We spoke to him for the feature, and he told us that he didn't really even believe it was going to happen until the day of. And even when he's in there, he's riding the wave, he's riding the crowd, and he's very happy that they didn't turn on him when Edge got eliminated. That story and many more that weren't even in this video are in the Inside the Royal Rumble feature at Fightful.com. The link is in the description below, but while you're here, leave a thumbs up and subscribe. Tap that bell for notifications. I hope you all enjoyed this video companion piece to Inside the Royal Rumble. It's something I've worked very hard and very long on. And if you guys don't mind, subscribe to Fightful Select because it enables stuff like this. It allows me to go out and not worry about the clicks, not worry about all that other stuff, and just seek out new, different content for you guys. I hope you all enjoy it. Please share the article. Please share the video. Until next time, we're out.